Hello and welcome to our fourth and final session of our TS2 SMB Azure Bootcamp. My name is Michael Copps. I'm a partner technology strategist for the TS2 team that's part of the SMB&D org, which stands for Small and Mid-Sized Business and Distribution.
Yep, and my name is Todd Sweetser. I am also a partner technology strategist in the TST organization, and we both work exclusively with SMB-focused partners.
So Todd, in our final session, we'll be discussing identity management in Azure. And this particular topic has been very exciting, but also very confusing for our partners because basically we're introducing something called Azure Active Directory. And the question's been, how does Azure Active Directory really work with my on-premises Active Directory? So I know you talk to partners all the time. What's some of the feedback that you're receiving from them concerning identity?
Well, I mean, a lot of the partners I work with are familiar with Office 365 and a lot of the directory integration options we have there, right? We've got ADFS, we've got directory synchronization that can also sync passwords. But then they start hearing about this Azure Active Directory and they want to know really what it is. The first thing they ask is, can this just completely replace my on-prem Active Directory? And that's really the first question, just due to the naming of it, right?
Yep. And I'll show you throughout my session how we're not replacing on-premises Active Directory, we're complementing it, and we're developing an entire solution based on both technologies. And I think you'll think it's really cool. It's one of my most favorite things to talk about because of some cool new application integrations that allow us to use Azure Active Directory to authenticate to just about any cloud service that you could think of.
And growing.
And growing. Growing every day, we're adding cloud services. So let's get started into the agenda. Chances are you've viewed our first three sessions. Now we're on the fourth session, which is our tech dive into identity management and Office 365. So today I'll be covering basically what is Azure Active Directory, how do I integrate with on-premises Active Directory, and then accessing those cool cloud apps with my Azure AD. And we'll show you some different flavors of the Azure AD. We've got the free offering and we have the premium offering, and then everything I talk about, of course, as always, I will demo at the end. So what is Azure Active Directory? It's basically our comprehensive identity and access management solution for the cloud, right? Like Todd said, it's not replacing on-premises Active Directory. We get that question all the time. On-premises AD isn't going anywhere. Conceivably, could you, for your business, put your business entirely in the cloud and only use Azure Active Directory? Yeah, there may be some scenarios, but chances are you have printers on premises, you have some file servers, you have something on premises where that AD is going to be useful, joining computers to the domain, for example.
Managing those computers.
Managing those computers. Yeah, we're still using Active Directory, and guess what? Just about every one of our customers has it. So not only is Azure Active Directory an identity platform for Azure and for Office 365, right, and other Microsoft Cloud apps, it's also a platform that my developers can develop against and use Azure Active Directory as my identity platform, and then also use it, like we mentioned earlier, for those third-party cloud applications out there, which I'll show you in my demo. And I mentioned earlier, it's got a lot of great free capabilities, but also there's a premium service, Azure Active Directory Premium, that gives us some more features that I think you'll be very interested in. So I really think this slide does a great job of really showing your overall identity infrastructure, right, or identity platform. So in the middle we have Azure Active Directory, right, and that's our cloud service. We have it integrating with our Windows Server Active Directory. See the circle arrows? That basically, we have a couple ways of doing that integration that I'll talk about shortly. Basically, we can use synchronization technologies to synchronize passwords up to Azure Active Directory, so my passwords are the same from on-premises AD to Azure. Or we can use something called ADFS, Active Directory Federation services, that a lot of our partners are already familiar with. I'll dive deep into both shortly. Once we have that synchronization going on, we can use PCs and devices, right, to access all of the resources we have in our environment. And I'll show you how a little later how this this application access that we have with Azure Active Directory is it's really perfected on not only your laptop, but on your tablet devices and your mobile devices. It's a very good interface for users to easily access the services that they need. There's also consumer identity providers out there building integrations into Azure Active Directory. Like I said earlier, you can do your custom line of business applications, use Azure Active Directory as that authentication source, or you may want to keep using your on-premises Active Directory, right? It really depends if you want to move your applications into the cloud. And then ISVs create plenty of applications integrating with Azure Active Directory. And then the most famous applications using Azure Active Directory, of course, Office 365, Dynamics CRM, Windows Intune. So if you're an Office 365 customer, or you've been selling it, you've been using Azure Active Directory as long as you've been on Office 365. But a lot of times you didn't know it because you're accessing the Azure Active Directory through your Office 365 admin console. So I talked about synchronization on the previous slide between on-prem AD, or integration between on-prem AD and Azure Active Directory. How do I do it? There are two methods. In our segment, Todd, I think you would agree, we focus on directory synchronization.
Oh, yeah.
It just has a lot less overhead, and it's quite simple to set up, and that is done with our directory synchronization tool. You're familiar with that tool if you've sold Office 365, right? And wanted to integrate somebody's on-premises AD with Office 365, you install DirSync. Well, the Azure Directory Synchronization tool is the exact same tool. Exact same tool. Remember, Office 365 uses Azure Active Directory. And what that tool does is it will synchronize all user objects. It's great for provisioning users when you onboard a company into Azure and Office 365. It will provide day-to-day administration. So if you change a user's department, their phone number in Active Directory, or create a new user, it will synchronize on demand or every 3 hours up with the Azure Active Directory. And then the third and the best feature that's been available for over a year now is the password synchronization. User changes their password in Active Directory, their password syncs up through a secure password hash and changes the Azure Active Directory password to the same thing. When you're accessing Azure Active Directory or Office 365, which uses it, you are still using Azure Active Directory. Just so happens that your password is the same as your password on premises. That is our directory synchronization story. I'll tell you, most of our partners are leading with this. Your other option that we've mentioned in previous sessions is ADFS, Active Directory Federation Services. And this has been around longer than our password synchronization. Basically, right when Office 365 came out, we said, go ahead and install ADFS, the ADFS technology, on your domain controller, install an ADFS proxy in a DMZ, and use ADFS to federate with Azure Active Directory. And by federating, you're truly using your on-premises credentials, but you're federated with our servers. That's a little more complex, and it requires more setup. That's why we have partners that are actually delivering these federated services in Azure VMs. Because when you move to, say, the cloud, say Office 365, and the last thing you want to be told is, well, you have to install an ADFS server on premises, and you need to install an ADFS proxy and a DMZ. Our customers and SMBs especially say, I don't want to add infrastructure. I'm going to the cloud. I want to get rid of infrastructure. Well, we can build ADFS out now in Azure VMs. So it is a cloud authentication solution. You basically, like we talked about in session 1, you extend your AD into Azure, do a virtual network. Right here, you'll see that in the slide, and then you spin up VMs, install a domain controller, install the ADFS service, and then install an ADFS proxy. You're paying for those extra VMs running in Azure. I still say for most customers, directory sync with password sync, much less overhead, and basically gives you that same password experience for the user.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really comes down to most of the time what our customers, especially in the small and medium business space, and even up into the larger spaces, all they really care about is having that same password, right? They don't necessarily need the full single sign-on experience. They just want the same password, and we're finding that 95+% of our partners are definitely implementing just the directory sync tool with password sync. It's a much simpler implementation, and it does just that.
And to get a bit into the weeds, if you compare the two, directory sync with password sync and ADFS, the experience for the user, if I'm on ADFS, I open up Outlook, I'm already logged into the domain, Outlook never prompts me for credentials. If I am doing password sync, with directory sync, I open up Outlook that first time, even though I'm logged into my domain, it's going to prompt me for credentials, but I just enter my username, my password, hit remember, and I'm not prompted thereafter until the password changes. So most of our customers are absolutely okay with that experience. So let's go back to Azure Active Directory. Let's talk about, okay, what are some of the, we've alluded to some of the usage scenarios, but what are they? Why do I want to sell this solution to my customers? First, many applications, one identity provider, right? Ask your customer what cloud solutions they're using, right? I think in our first session we said over 65% of SMB customers are using something cloud. So chances are maybe they're using an accounting software as a service platform. They're using Dropbox, Salesforce.com, a lot of competitive solutions, even AWS, we have an integration for that. How do I create one page they can go to with one set of credentials? We'll show you how to do that with Azure Active Directory. It's pretty cool. Okay, I give my users access. How do I manage it? I think that is probably the biggest benefit of Azure Active Directory. It's a management platform where IT can manage access to these applications. So imagine you've got, you want to sign up for 20 licenses for a Intuit accounting software that's online, right? And you don't want your users to ever have that username and password. So you go to the Intuit site and you create all 20 accounts with passwords. You take those 20 accounts and input them in the Azure Active Directory Administrators Console for each user. The users never have any visibility into those accounts. Basically, they're just clicking on a square to give them access to that application using their Azure Active Directory credentials. Why would you want to do that? User leaves the company, all you have to do, you don't have to go to Intuit and disable that account, you just disable the user's Azure Active Directory account. So, centralized management, hugely important. And then there's the ability to monitor, protect, get some reporting on this platform. I'll show you some of that in my demo. And then the personalized self-service capabilities. I'm going to show, we talked about having that experience on multiple devices. We'll show you the very user-friendly experience of accessing all of these application integrations through the browser on your preferred device. So here's a few. I think last time I checked there was over 2,000 integrations. I think this slide only has about 60 of them, but these are the lot of big ones. But like I said, when I deliver these events live, I always ask for people to raise their hand. Tell me a non-Microsoft cloud service one of your customers is using. They'll raise their hand, they'll give it to me. I'm at about an 80% clip of it being in one of the 2,000 that we have in our library. So it's pretty high, and like Todd said earlier, it's growing.
Yeah, when we were doing them live, there was only 800 to 1,000 in the library, and that was only a month and a half ago, so it's growing at a tremendous pace.
Yep. So, here's a sneak peek at the admin portal, which I'll actually show you. It's just a comprehensive identity and access management solution, right? You would still use on-premises Active Directory, but you would also go in here to manage the Azure Active Directory as well. Things like application access, directory synchronization. I think it'll become clear when I demo it shortly. And like I mentioned, that IT professional, they have the ability to go in and disable access to those apps. Finally, here is the self-service capability. Here's a screenshot of that great console that users go to gain access, and it's designed for that touch experience, right? If you've been invested in Microsoft for the past year, you know that we're leading with touch. All the devices we go out and buy are touch enabled, so the applications, the solutions we're delivering are optimized for touch, as you would expect. I can also customize my login, right? Here's a login page for users to go into, enter their Azure Active Directory. It's their own, basically the address is myapps.microsoft.com. You go in and that's how users get access to their Azure Active Directory. And then there's some capabilities that you'll see where they can self-service reset their password if they have the premium service, and we'll show you the difference shortly. Here's what you get with the free offering. You get basically everything we just talked about. You get access to the application gallery. You get some basic security reports. You can, IT can assign app access to the users and manage that app access. And IT can change the password for the users. The free offering comes with the directory synchronization. Like I said, everything I talked about earlier. Now, the premium has some enhanced features that I'll share with you. Now, remember, premium is a paid offering. It's licensed per user, and it's currently only available via enterprise agreement. So it's something we're working on, but right now, if your customer wants it, needs to be part of an EA, just contact your Microsoft rep, and we'll work with you and find you the best option to get your customer the premium service. You can demo it out right now. They recently just enabled the Azure Active Directory Premium trial, so you can go into your account and enable your premium trial. Start testing out a lot of the features.
You know, normally there's a minimum purchase for an EA. Does that come into play with this particular solution?
Actually, that's a good point. With the premium, you can get a special enterprise agreement through a LAR where you don't have the, you don't have to be 250 seats. You don't have to have a minimum required. I would say, that's why I said contact your Microsoft rep. It can get a little complicated, but there certainly is a way that a small business customer can get this premium right now. So, what do we get with premium? Check out what's bolded. You get the SLAs. There's no object number limitation, though in SMB, I think the limitation is, what, 500,000 for directory sync. So it doesn't really come into play anyway. You get some better, as you would expect with premium, group provisioning and group control for IT. I think the most important thing you get with premium is multi-factor authentication, two-factor authentication. I don't hear from a lot of partners in SMB that need two-factor authentication. For some reason, Todd, your partners always seem to want it. I don't know if it's because you support the East Coast.
Well, it probably does have to do a lot of it in Mid-Atlantic and in the government area. And usually, if anything, there's a subset of customers that require multi-factor, such as the CXOs or somebody who's touching more sensitive information. The nice thing about it, it is flexible. It doesn't have to be everybody. It could be just a subset of the users within the company that have multi-factor set up.
And what we mean by multi-factor, basically we mean two ways to authenticate, usually having to involve your either an RSA key or your cell phone, right? Getting a text and completing that authentication. And Microsoft, we bought a company a while back called Phone Factor, integrated that into our solution, and that's the multi-factor authentication solution you get with Azure AD Premium. Something else you get is self-service password reset for users. I showed you that screenshot. Users can just reset their password, pretty useful. And then you get to customize that. I showed you the touch screen where users can get their applications. You can customize the branding and your access portal. So some pretty cool things with premium, but don't let it stop you, because free, you get the core in the meat of what we're trying to show you with the free offering, which we think is pretty good.
One thing I'll mention too, I mean, we say that it's free. It's the solution itself is free, but your services are not. So that's where you're going to make some money there.
Yeah.
You provide the services to manage and implement that and educate the customers on how to use it.
Yep, absolutely. So let's get into the demo, and let's see Azure Active Directory in action. I will start off. Basically, we titled this session Identity Management in Office 365. That's important. Every Office 365 customer has access to their Azure Active Directory, whether they do it through their admin console in O365 or go through Azure. You can certainly do that. The easiest way to gain access, and this is extremely easy, go to azure.com and log into Azure with your admin account for Office 365. If you do that, though, it's going to say you don't have any services, we're not letting you in, you got to put in your credit card, you got to purchase. So we say, instead, let's add our Office 365 to our existing Azure account that we already have other stuff running on, right? So if you look at my screen here, you'll see that I have Contoso. This is an Office 365 account. How did I add that in here? It's simple. I clicked on the Active Directory section in the portal. I went to New, and then I went to New Directory. Right here, Custom Create. And I can create a brand new Azure Active Directory. I don't want to do that. I want to add an existing one that's basically running my Office 365 tenant. So I will say, use an existing directory. And what it wants me to do is it wants me to sign out. All it's going to do is ask me to log in with my admin credentials of my existing directory. And so I'm not going to do that because I don't want to sign out. But then it's just going to put my Office 365 Azure AD right here, and right here in my Active Directory section of the Azure portal. So if you're administering several Office 365 customers, you can literally go into your Active Directory portal and start adding all of them, so you have access to their Azure Active Directory. You will need an admin account for each one of them, but you can add it, and then you'll have the benefits of having the back-end access to their Azure Active Directory. So why do you need back-end access to Azure Active Directory? Let me show you what it looks like. So here is the Microsoft account that we use, and actually, let's go ahead and minimize that, and we'll go to this one, MSTS2. This is the demo account that Todd and I use for all of our demos. We have all of our stuff built in. It's a better one to show you, and I'll click on that, and here you'll see it looks a lot like a typical directory management solution. I have users, and I have groups, applications, domains, where I register my domains similarly to Office 365. Directory integration. So if I click on directory integration, you'll see that I have my DirSync, right? The DirSync with password sync tool activated here. If I just scroll down right here and click here, you'll see I have a link to download the DirSync tool. If I download the DirSync tool here, I think it's called dirsync.exe. It's the exact same download as the DirSync tool that I download in Office 365. Exact same tool, syncing with Office 365 Azure Active Directory.
And it is important to note, if you've already got that set up, you don't need to do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. So if I go on to reports, here you'll see, I've just got this is another reason to use Azure Active Directory. I've got some good sign-in reports from unknown sources, so some good security measures that go beyond what we get with Office 365. And remember, if I'm using Azure AD to authenticate to other sources, I get those reports right here in my Azure AD. Sign in from multiple geographies, and then you'll look at the premium reports, IP addresses with suspicious activity, infected devices, irregular sign-in activity, some very good reports I think your customers will like, and it'll make them feel really good about choosing Azure Active Directory as their identity management platform for the cloud. So let's go to the fun portion, which is adding that application access in Azure Active Directory, right? So if you look here, I clicked on applications. Right now we've installed a bunch of different applications that we gain access to with Azure Active Directory. Notice how Exchange Online and SharePoint Online are there. It was always there. The first time I logged in, because this was an Office 365 account, it automatically gave us that access because Exchange Online and SharePoint Online use Azure Active Directory. We went ahead and just added some other things as well. Google Apps, you know, definitely showing Microsoft's commitment to cross-platform, right? Google, competitor of ours, of course, will give you access in our application store. So Twitter is one of them. So let's go ahead and add a new one. And all I do is I go to the Add option right here, and I can add an app that my org is developing. None of us are developers, so we're going to go ahead and choose one from the gallery and choose that middle option right here. And here is the application gallery. Notice how we have about 2,000, over 2,000 different application integrations, right? So if I go ahead and do a search for, of course, the big ones like Salesforce.com and Todd, I don't know, can you think of anything I should search for?
You mentioned Intuit earlier.
Intuit, right there, you get an Intuit integration. Chances are you're thinking of them. Go into your Azure console, look it up. Chances are by the time you look at your Azure console, there's going to be more than 2,035 in there. So let's go ahead and do one. In order to show to the integration, I need to have a cloud service that I have access to. I have a username and password for. So I like to do OneDrive. And this is my OneDrive personal, right? We have OneDrive for Business that's part of Office 365. But what about my OneDrive consumer? Sometimes I take pictures on my phone and they're pictures for work and they'll automatically upload to my OneDrive, but then how do I move them from that OneDrive over to other resources or have access? So maybe you might want to add OneDrive access for users so they can go in easily with one click into their OneDrive. I will go ahead and find OneDrive, which is right here, and we'll go ahead and add that in to our portal, and you'll see that I have my OneDrive right here at the top. It's my new application that I have added. So let's go ahead and click on it. And here you'll see the management for my OneDrive. I can configure the sign-on, which it automatically chose the method, password single sign-on. If I was using ADFS, I would choose this option. We're not, so we'll keep what they chose. And then I can assign access to my users. By default, all of my users don't have access to the OneDrive. So as you can see on the right-hand side, assigned, no. Who do I want to give access to? I'll give it to Karen Berg. She's our good demo account, and we've used her many times in the past. So I'll go ahead and click Assign, and I have an option. I want to let Karen basically enter her own credentials. I could just give her access to the app. But what if it's a corporate, or if it's an account that we're using on OneDrive that the corporation created, and only I have the username and password, but I want to give Karen access? I can go ahead and click on that and enter the OneDrive credentials. I'll go ahead and enter my personal OneDrive credentials. That's what I'm using. And we'll hit OK. And if we scroll down here, you'll see that Karen has a yes by her name. That means we just granted her access. So let's go ahead and check out what that access looks like. If I go ahead and open up a new browser, and I'm going to open up a browser here where Karen has access, I'll click on Karen's name here and log in. And basically this is, let me just type it in so you can see, myapps.microsoft.com. There we go. And now we had CRM enabled for Karen, Exchange Online, SharePoint, and we just enabled OneDrive for her as well. So I can go ahead and log into this portal. I can click on Exchange Online, for example, and remember this is from any device. I can click on CRM. Let's do OneDrive since we just added that, and notice what it does. I'm not being prompted for credentials. It'll show my credentials once, and then it will throw me into my OneDrive. Here, let's go ahead and click off that. So instant access without ever having my credentials, all managed through Azure Active Directory. So let's go back and into the portal, and let me quickly show you the user directory. And here you'll see how basically we're managing through Azure Active Directory all of our different users. Because, like I showed you earlier, we have directory synchronization running, you'll see that I have a source from field that shows me, hey, I've got these users were created in Windows Azure Active Directory, or these are on-premises users that were synced up. So it tells me the difference between those users. I can easily go ahead and click on a new user right here, and what I want to show you here is how when I create a new user in Azure AD, it's going to automatically populate in my Office 365 account, just to kind of prove that the two are absolutely integrated. So we'll go ahead and create a new user called Aaron, so he shows up at the top of the user page, and we'll go Aaron here, and we'll call Aaron Test. Aaron Test, they're a user. We don't want multi-factor authentication. Hit next, create, and there's a temporary password. I just created a new user. You see Aaron Test there. So if I go back here as Karen Berg's an administrator of this Office 365 account. I go back to my first tab here, you'll see that I have access to my Office 365 admin console. That is the MSTS2 account for Office 365, and I'm managing that Azure Active Directory in my demo account in Azure. So here you'll see I did a refresh. Aaron Test is right there. It's just giving me another view into that same directory, and here you'll see it shows me the DirSync status as well here. So tight integration there between Azure Active Directory, Office 365, and on-premises Active Directory. This is the future of our identity management here at Microsoft, really focusing on the cloud, Microsoft Cloud and third-party cloud.
And giving you many ways to actually manage it and control it.
Yep. So that concludes the demo portion. Let's just do a little review. Some links, some session summary. Basically, we talked about Azure Active Directory as our main identity solution for the cloud, right? And we talked about how it integrates with Active Directory on premises, right? So make sure you choose the method of your that you want to integrate. If you're an SMB partner, Todd and I highly recommend go with directory sync with password sync, right? It's a great option. Azure Active Directory, you can manage users on, looks like this slide's out of date, on over 2,000 different third-party and Microsoft applications, and you could use the free version, or you can use the premium version that gets us some great features like multi-factor authentication, some advanced reporting, and cool stuff like that. And if you want to learn more, here's a link to Azure Active Directory. You can simply go to azure.com and scroll down to the Active Directory portion, or as always, you can go to our Cloud SureStep site and go to the section on Azure. We have a lot of great resources on Azure and Azure Active Directory specifically. Think of this as your one-stop place for anything Azure in SMB or anything cloud in SMB. Todd, do you have anything to add before we conclude?
No, I think it's just, I shouldn't say no, I should say yes. I think it's important to note that, and everybody does understand, have a clear understanding that Azure Active Directory is a complementary solution, ultimately, to an on-premise or be it cloud-hosted in infrastructure Active Directory. But it brings a lot more capabilities, a lot more power to be able to actually manage users' access to all kinds of third-party applications, and I think today's session really brought that home.
I would agree, and I would say, I would recommend to get started and showing this to customers, get a customer, find out what cloud services they're using, and then do a demo. Take a tablet device and say, hey, how would you like a portal where you can get access to your financial cloud service, your Salesforce.com, whatever else you're using, and your Exchange Online through one portal for your users. I think customers will be very impressed, and it should lead to some great opportunity for you. So thanks for joining, and this concludes session 4 and our entire series on the TS2 SMB Azure Bootcamp. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
you.